Hey everybody, Father Warner here. Hope you had a blessed Sunday. I'm recording this on a Sunday evening. As you know, I take the Saturday evenings off from recording once a week. And today we had guests. So our guests have just left. They're from Goa. Mervyn and his daughter Karen were here. We had a lovely time with them. But I realized it is 4:45 while I'm recording, and that's way past our regular recording time. I'm going to do today chapter 21. It's all of 14 verses, not a very long chapter, and perhaps this chapter in many ways tells us things that we already know. We've heard of the judgment of God, but what I need to tell you is, and I've said this before, that the prophet Jeremiah, the book of Jeremiah, is not written chronologically. It's not, well, this happened today, well, that happened tomorrow, and then, no, it's written according to themes. So yesterday when we did chapter 20, which was a very emotional text, because remember chapter 20 begins with Pashur, the son of Immer. Now I'm purposely stressing this, and I'll tell you why. Pashur, the son of Immer, who was an official in the temple, put the prophet Jeremiah into stocks, and Jeremiah had to tell him, well, you may have put me into stocks, but your stocks are about to crash. And that came to pass. We heard yesterday in chapter 20 for the first time that the threat from the north was the Babylonians. We heard that in the text of verse 4. Now, 20 years have passed since chapter 20 and 21. So you can see, as I said, the prophet Jeremiah is not written chronologically. And we have names in chapter 21 and chapter 22, names of kings and people. And that is the reason why we are able to figure out what year it is. Just to give you a brief understanding, and I have done this already in the introduction to the prophet Jeremiah. Always, I think every 5 days, please go back and listen to that teaching, because it will help you to understand the book. It will help you to, as a self-study, to refresh your memory. But you remember that I said that the prophet Jeremiah really, his ministry encompassed 4 kings, 5 technically, but I'm going to stick to 4. The first was the good king Josiah, who began his ministry well. Subsequently, he too gets a bit lost. Josiah died in battle against the Egyptians, and we know that Josiah puts his son, gets onto the throne. He's knocked off by the Egyptians, and Jehoiakim or Jehoiakim is put on the throne by the Egyptians. He is again knocked off. He rules for 11 years, and then Nebuchadnezzar comes down to Jerusalem, and Jehoiakim is defeated, and in his place his son Jehoiachin is put as regent. He rules for 3 months before he and his mother are taken into captivity by the Babylonians. And what King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon does is he places Jehoiachin's uncle on the throne. His name is King Zedekiah. And Zedekiah will be the last of the Davidic lines of kings. He will be the last king of the southern kingdom, and from now on, at the end of this, they will go into exile. Now, I said that Zedekiah was made king and placed as a king by Nebuchadnezzar, but somewhere over the next 11 years that he rules, Zedekiah decides to rebel against Nebuchadnezzar, and that's when he comes with his entire force to Jerusalem, and he surrounds the city. There's a siege. Some say the siege was 1.5 years, some say the siege was 30 months. Whatever the siege is, we know from the prophet Jeremiah, from the texts that were already, and we did this yesterday in chapter 19 also, that the siege caused the people to starve. We heard how God says, I will give you into cannibalism. You will be so starved that you will eat the flesh of your own brothers and sisters. Now, somewhere in this, towards the end of the siege, and not because the siege ended, but because the Babylonians destroyed the walls of Jerusalem, but King Zedekiah, along with some of his nobility, decided to make a break for it. And they escaped, but the Babylonians caught them on the plains of Jericho. We know that he was taken to Babylon. There, his sons were brought before him and then slaughtered one by one. The last thing that Zedekiah saw was his sons being slaughtered, and finally, of course, they plucked off his eyes and imprisoned him. That's what happened to Zedekiah. Now, I'm telling you all this history because the text of today is tells us of the siege around Jerusalem. And King Zedekiah knows that this is not good news. He hoped that what happened to Israel 100 years ago when King Sennacherib attacked Jerusalem, God intervened and 185,000 of the Babylonian soldiers were put to death by God. And he hoped that the same would happen all over again. Now, remember that in chapter 20, the prophet Jeremiah was ridiculed and put in stocks. In chapter 21, it is the king who now sends his priests to Jeremiah to plead to God on behalf of the people, as we will see in this text. Inquire of the Lord on our behalf, for King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon is making war against us. He wants God now to somehow work a miracle. And the text of today will tell us God's response. Is God going to succumb or not? We're going to hear that in the text of today. So let's begin. I hope that introduction was not too heavy and helped you to understand this. So, verse 1, this is the word that came to Jeremiah from the Lord when King Zedekiah sent to him Pashur the son of Malchiah. Now, this is the reason why I said to you that Pashur the son of Malchiah is not the same Pashur that we saw in chapter 20, who is the son of Immer. So this is obviously another Pashur. And Zedekiah sent to him, to Pashur, and to the priest Zephaniah, the son of Maaseiah. Now, this Zephaniah, who is the priest, he, from historical knowledge and from texts in the prophet Jeremiah, from chapter 29, from chapter 52, we know that he was second to the high priest. He was finally put to death by King Nebuchadnezzar at Riblah, and he was one of those who constantly opposed Jeremiah. So here's the irony. The ones who opposed Jeremiah are now sent by the king to Jeremiah himself, asking them to intervene. These were the false prophets, and now God has humbled them and they are sent to Jeremiah. So he comes, and verse 2 tells us, please inquire of the Lord on our behalf, for King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon is making war against us. Perhaps the Lord will perform a wonderful deed for us, as he has often done, and will make him withdraw from us. So this was their hope. 100 years ago, you defeated Sennacherib. Overnight, 185,000 soldiers were put to death. Will the Lord work a miracle once again, as he has often done? They admit that God has often worked great and mighty miracles. And I think this text is a great reflection for you and me, because we too tend to take the Lord for granted. How many wonderful things has the Lord always done for us, until the Lord runs out of patience when it comes to us too. Verse 3, then Jeremiah said to them, thus you shall say to Zedekiah, thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, I am going to turn back the weapons of war that are in your hands, and with which you are fighting against the king of Babylon and against the Chaldeans who are besieging you. So now we know this is the siege, besieging you outside the walls. and I will bring them together into the center of the city. So your walls are going to be breached. The Babylonians are going to come in. I myself, and here's the irony, God says, I am not going to fight with you, Zedekiah. I'm not going to fight for my own chosen people. I am going to fight with your enemies. I'm going to make sure you are defeated because of your apostasy, because of your idolatry, because of your disobedience, because of your refusal to turn to me. Verse 5, I myself will fight against you with outstretched hand and mighty arm, in anger, in fury, and in great wrath. I will strike down the inhabitants of the city, both human beings and animals. They shall die of the great pestilence. Verse 7, afterwards, says the Lord, I will give King Zedekiah of Judah and his servants and the people in the city, those who survive the pestilence, sword, and famine, into the hands of King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon, into the hands of their enemies, into the hands of those who seek their lives. He shall strike them down with the edge of the sword. He shall not pity them or spare them or have compassion. So God first says, the first thing I will do is strike you down with pestilence. Then I will make sure that Nebuchadnezzar rips into the city and destroys each one of you and put you all to death. Now, remember that Pashur and Zephaniah have come to the prophet Jeremiah on behalf of King Zedekiah. We know that Zephaniah is the assistant high priest, so it's quite obvious he knows his scriptures. And to him, now Jeremiah practically quotes Deuteronomy chapter 30 verses 15 to 20. I think I marked it so that I can turn and yes, so I think I can even read that text for you. But first let me read verse 8, which is so similar to Deuteronomy chapter 30 verse 15. So let me read what God had already said a long time ago in Deuteronomy chapter 30. God said this, see, I have set before you. So I'm reading Deuteronomy chapter 30 verse 15 onwards. See, I have set before you today life and prosperity. This is when they made the covenant with God. So God says, I have set before you today life and prosperity, death and adversity. If you obey the commandments of the Lord your God that I am commanding you today, by loving the Lord your God, walking in his ways and observing his commandments, his decrees, his ordinance, then you shall live and become numerous, and the Lord your God will bless you. Look at what God said. If you keep my commands, you will be numerous, you will be blessed, and you will possess the land that you are entering. Verse 17, but if you turn your hearts away and you do not hear, but are led astray to bow down to other gods and serve them, I declare to you today. So God had said this a long time ago. If you are not faithful, you shall perish. You shall not live long in the land that you are crossing the Jordan to enter and possess. Now, God had told them this, his plan, a long time ago. And so now in verse 8, Jeremiah is going to repeat to Zephaniah, the assistant high priest, a message that God had said a long time ago. So he goes back to King Zedekiah and tell him, too late, too late. Now read verse 8 of chapter 21. And to this people you shall say, listen now how similar the words are. Thus says the Lord, see, I am setting before you the way of life and the way of death. Those who stay in the city shall die by the sword, by famine and pestilence. But those who go out and surrender to the Chaldeans who are besieging you, you shall live and shall have their lives as a prize of war. So God says, well, I gave you a long time ago a choice. You chose badly. And now because you chose badly, you will die either by the sword or by the famine, or you will be taken into exile. Verse 10, for I have set my face against the city for evil and not for good, says the Lord. Remember that in chapter 18 verse 17, God said, I've turned my back, I've turned my face against you. And God repeats that again. It shall be given into the hands of the king of Babylon, and he shall burn it with fire. What can we learn from this text? That God gives us a choice. He chooses, he says, choose life or choose death, but you have to choose. You can't say, well, Lord, I've not made up my mind. Not making up your mind is also a choice that you make. So you must make a choice, my dear friends. You must make a choice. And then you must recognize that your choice will make you. You must make a choice and then recognize that your choice will make you. There were two thieves who were crucified at the side of Jesus. One of them made his choice for Christ. He said, remember me, just one word, Lord, remember me. And the other made a choice to rebuke and ridicule God. Verse 11, to the house of the king of Judah say, hear the word of the Lord, O house of David. Thus says the Lord, execute justice in the morning and deliver from the hands of the oppressor anyone who has been robbed, or else my wrath will go forth like fire and burn with no one to quench it because of your evil doings. Verse 13, see, I am against you. I am against you, says God. I am against you. O inhabitants of the valley, O rock of the plain. The rock of the plain was a reference to the city of Jerusalem. They believed that they were set up. If you go to Jerusalem, it's on a rock. It's on a mountain. And to the south, to the east, and to the west are valleys. It was, in many ways, if you wanted to attack Jerusalem, you had to attack it from the north. It was the most vulnerable part of the city. Because today when you go there, you might see roads running around Jerusalem. But in those days, the valleys were deep. And because Jerusalem was set on a hill, it was impregnable. So God says, you who can, verse 13, see, I am against you, O inhabitants of the valley, O rock of the plain, says the Lord. You who say, who can come down against us, or who can enter our places of refuge? You thought nobody could destroy you. And verse 14 says, I will punish you according to the fruit of your doing, says the Lord. I will kindle a fire in its forest, and it shall devour all that is around you. This reference to the fire in the forest is really from 1 Kings chapter 7 verse 2. The royal palace was called the house of the forest of Lebanon. So God says, I will destroy your city, I will destroy your palace, I will destroy your walls. Tomorrow we'll continue doing chapter 22. I've been racing through this teaching because there's someone cutting grass outside and it's creating quite a bit of a racket. I hope you had a restful weekend. God be with you, God bless you. Don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to this channel. And if you haven't, then may I recommend, because I can see over the weekend a lot of you take a bit of a break, please catch up with the previous teachings before you actually settle down on chapter 21. Tomorrow we'll do chapter 22. Bye for now, everybody. God bless you.